My children put me in a nursing home on a Wednesday. They came as a team, all three of them, rehearsed and ready. They said it was for my own good. They said I couldn't take care of myself anymore. They said the house was too much for one person. Then they sold my home, emptied my bank accounts, auctioned my furniture, and divided everything I'd spent 40 years building between themselves like vultures splitting a carcass. They thought I was finished. They thought I'd sit in that nursing home room, stare at the walls, and fade away quietly. They thought they'd gotten everything, but they didn't know about the safety deposit box. The one my wife, Margaret, opened 11 months before she died. The one at First Federal Bank on Washington Street. The one that contained 3 envelopes, each with one of my children's names written on the front in Margaret's perfect handwriting. Each envelope held something different. And what was inside them didn't just expose my children. It destroyed the lies they'd been telling for years. Before we go any further, I want to thank you for being here today. If this story has already caught your attention, take a quick second and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It means more than you know, and it truly helps this channel grow and reach people who need to hear these stories. Also, a gentle reminder. While this story carries real emotions and real lessons, some names, locations, and details have been fictionalized for narrative and educational purposes. Any resemblance to specific individuals is coincidental, but the truth behind it is meant to help. Stay with me on this one. My name is Robert Calloway. I'm 63 years old, and as I tell you this story, I'm sitting in the living room of a house I never expected to live in a town I never expected to call home, rebuilding a life my own children tried to end. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start in a nursing home. It starts in a small brick house on Chestnut Lane in Dayton, Ohio. The house Margaret and I bought in 1990, the year we got married. We were both 27. We had $14,000 in savings, jobs we believed in, and the kind of optimism that only young people who haven't been broken yet can carry. Margaret Ann Calloway, born Margaret Novak, was the daughter of a steelworker and a seamstress from the east side of Dayton. She grew up in a house with 5 siblings, hand-me-down clothes, and a dinner table where you ate fast or you didn't eat at all. She learned early that nothing was given to you. Everything was earned. I met Margaret at a bowling alley in 1987. I was 24, working as a claims adjuster at Ohio Mutual Insurance. She was 24, working as a paralegal at a small law firm downtown. She was bowling with her sister, and she threw a gutter ball so spectacularly that it bounced into the next lane. I retrieved it for her. She looked at me with brown eyes that had absolutely no embarrassment in them and said, "I meant to do that." I was done for, right there. A bowling alley on a Tuesday night, and I knew. We dated for 3 years, married in 1990. Small wedding, like everything in our lives. Deliberate, practical, meaningful. Margaret wore a dress her mother altered from a thrift store find. I wore my father's suit. We had the reception at her parents' house with homemade food and a radio playing in the backyard. The house on Chestnut Lane cost us $86,000. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a basement that flooded when it rained, and a backyard just big enough for a garden. Margaret planted tomatoes the first summer. I fixed the basement. We painted every room ourselves, arguing about colors the way married people do, passionately and pointlessly, because Margaret always won. We had 3 children. Ryan came in 1992, Michelle in 1994, and Kevin, the youngest, in 1997. 3 kids in 5 years. The house on Chestnut Lane went from quiet to chaotic overnight, and Margaret handled it with the same efficiency she brought to everything. She made lists. She organized schedules.
She balanced budgets with the precision of someone who'd grown up knowing that every dollar mattered.
I kept working at Ohio Mutual, moved up from claims adjuster to senior adjuster, then to regional supervisor. It wasn't exciting work, but I was good at it. I understood risk. I understood documentation. I understood that the difference between a fair settlement and a disaster was the quality of the paperwork behind it. Margaret said I was born to work in insurance because I treated life like a series of potential claims that needed proper filing. She wasn't wrong. Margaret stayed at the law firm for 15 years, then moved to the county recorder's office, where she processed property deeds, liens, and legal filings. She loved it. She'd come home and tell me about the cases she'd seen. People who lost their homes because they didn't file the right paperwork. Families destroyed by unsigned wills. Estates torn apart because someone forgot to update a beneficiary form. "Robert," she'd say, shaking her head over dinner, "you wouldn't believe how many people lose everything because they didn't put it in writing. A handshake means nothing. A promise means nothing. Only paper means something." She was obsessed with documentation. Our filing cabinet in the spare bedroom was a monument to Margaret's belief that paper was power. Tax returns going back 30 years, insurance policies, mortgage statements, birth certificates, social security cards, medical records. Every significant document our family had ever produced, filed alphabetically, cross-referenced, and updated annually. I used to joke that our filing cabinet was better organized than the Library of Congress. Margaret didn't laugh. "Someday," she'd say, "you'll need something in that cabinet, and you'll be glad I kept it." She was right. She was always right. But the thing she was most right about, the thing that would save my life, wasn't in the filing cabinet. It was in a safety deposit box I didn't know existed. Let me tell you about my children, because this story is about them, and you need to understand who they are before you can understand what they did. Ryan, my oldest, born 1992. Ryan was always the leader, the first to walk, the first to talk, the first to figure out how to get what he wanted. He was smart, genuinely smart, but he was also calculating in a way that made Margaret uncomfortable. She noticed it before I did. "Robert, watch how Ryan handles his siblings," she said one evening when the kids were young. "He doesn't fight them. He negotiates. He trades. He figures out what they want and uses it as leverage." "He's just being a kid," I said. "No," Margaret said quietly. "He's being strategic. There's a difference." Ryan went to Ohio State, got a degree in finance, and moved to Columbus. He worked at an investment firm and did well. Nice apartment, new car every 2 years, the kind of life that looked successful from the outside. But Margaret and I noticed that Ryan never seemed to have money when it counted. He'd borrow $500 here, $1,000 there, always with a promise to pay it back, always with an excuse for why he couldn't right now. Michelle, my middle child, born 1994. Michelle was the performer, the one who needed attention, needed validation, needed to be the center of every room. She was beautiful. Margaret's brown eyes, my build, and she knew it. She used her beauty the way Ryan used his intelligence, as a tool. Michelle married a man named Craig Porter when she was 24. Craig was a pharmaceutical sales rep who drove a BMW and talked about himself in the third person. "Craig Porter doesn't do mediocre," he'd say at Thanksgiving dinner, and Margaret would catch my eye across the table with an expression that could have curdled milk. Michelle and Craig lived in a suburb of Cincinnati. They had a big house, big cars, big credit card bills, and a lifestyle that looked expensive because it was. What I didn't know, what Margaret discovered years later, was that Michelle and Craig were drowning in debt. Over $180,000 on credit cards alone. Kevin, my youngest, born 1997.
Kevin was different from his siblings. Quieter, more sensitive. He struggled in school, struggled socially, struggled with the kind of anxiety that makes everything harder than it should be. Margaret and I worried about him constantly.
Kevin never went to college. He worked various jobs: retail, warehouse work, delivery driving. He lived in a small apartment in Dayton, close to us, and he was the one who came to dinner most often. He was also the one who asked for money most often. Not large amounts, but steady. $200 for rent, $150 for a car repair, $100 for groceries. Margaret kept track of every dollar we gave to each child. She had a ledger, an actual handwritten ledger, documenting every loan, every gift, every financial interaction. I thought it was excessive. She thought it was essential. "Someday," she said, "they're going to argue about who got what. And when that day comes, I want the numbers to be clear." I didn't understand then what she was preparing for. I understand now. By 2020, Margaret and I had built a comfortable life. The house was paid off, had been since 2015. My pension from Ohio Mutual was solid. We had $340,000 in retirement savings and a life insurance policy worth $250,000. The house itself was worth around $280,000. Chestnut Lane had become a nice neighborhood as Dayton slowly revitalized. We weren't rich, but we were secure. The kind of secure that comes from 40 years of careful living, disciplined saving, and a wife who never let a receipt go unrecorded. Then Margaret got sick. It was ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The diagnosis came in March 2022. The neurologist explained it with clinical precision: progressive muscle weakness, loss of motor function, eventual respiratory failure. Average life expectancy after diagnosis, 2 to 5 years. Margaret listened to the diagnosis the way she listened to everything, quietly, attentively, without visible emotion. Then she asked 2 questions. How long do I have where I can still write? And how long do I have where I can still think clearly? The doctor said both would likely remain functional for 12 to 18 months. Margaret nodded. "That's enough time," she said. Enough time for what? I didn't know then. I know now. Over the next 11 months, Margaret did something extraordinary. While her body slowly betrayed her, while her muscles weakened and her mobility declined, her mind remained sharp. And she used that mind to build something I wouldn't discover until after she was gone. She made phone calls when I was at work. She met with people: a lawyer, a banker, an old colleague from the recorder's office. She spent hours at her desk, writing in a journal I wasn't allowed to read. "It's private, Robert. You'll understand later." I respected her privacy. Margaret had earned that respect over 32 years of marriage. If she said I'd understand later, I believed her, but I did notice things. She spent a lot of time on the phone with Ryan. The conversations seemed tense. She'd close the door to the bedroom and speak in a low voice, and when she came out, her jaw would be set in that hard line that meant she'd learned something she didn't like. She also had a long conversation with Michelle that ended with Margaret hanging up the phone and sitting in her chair for 20 minutes without speaking. When I asked what was wrong, she said, "Michelle is in more trouble than she'll admit, and she's going to come looking for a lifeline soon." What kind of trouble? The kind that people create for themselves and expect their parents to fix. I didn't press further. I should have. With Kevin, Margaret was gentler. She'd call him every day, checking in. She'd invite him for dinner twice a week. She'd slip him $50 for groceries in a way that preserved his dignity. She loved all 3 of our children, but I think she understood Kevin the best. His vulnerability, his anxiety, his desperate desire to be seen as capable. One evening, about 8 months after her diagnosis,
Margaret asked me to drive her to First Federal Bank on Washington Street. She said she needed to access something in a safety deposit box. I didn't know we had a safety deposit box, I said. We don't. I do. I looked at her. Margaret looked back at me with those brown eyes, the same eyes that had shown no embarrassment at a bowling alley 35 years earlier, and said, "Robert, I've been preparing for something. I can't tell you what yet, but I need you to trust me, the way you've always trusted me." I drove her to the bank. She went inside alone. She was in there for about 45 minutes. When she came out, she looked tired but satisfied, the way she looked after finishing a difficult project at work. "What did you do in there?" I asked as we drove home. "I left something for you, for later, when you need it." "Kath, you're scaring me." She reached over and took my hand. "Don't be scared, Robert. I've taken care of everything. When the time comes, go to First Federal, Box 77. The key is in my jewelry box, taped to the bottom of the velvet liner. Don't tell anyone about it, not Ryan, not Michelle, not Kevin, no one." "Why?" "Because what's in that box will only work if no one knows it exists." Margaret died on February 14th, 2023. Valentine's Day. She'd always hated Valentine's Day. She said it was a manufactured holiday designed to sell chocolate and cards. But she died on it anyway. And now I can't see a heart-shaped box without feeling mine break.
She died at home, in our bed, in the house on Chestnut Lane. I was beside her. Kevin was in the living room. Ryan had driven down from Columbus. Michelle had come from Cincinnati. For the last 3 days of her life, all 3 children were present. And for those 3 days, they were the family Margaret and I had raised. United, grieving, present. It wouldn't last. The funeral was on a Saturday. Margaret had planned it herself, the music, the readings, the flowers. She'd written her own eulogy and left instructions for the pastor to read it. That was Margaret. Even in death, she organized everything. The eulogy contained a line that I didn't understand at the time, but would come to understand later. "I have tried to protect my family with the only tools I had: truth, paper, and foresight. I hope they will be enough." After the funeral, we gathered at the house. Friends, neighbors, colleagues from the recorder's office. People brought food. Stories were shared. Margaret was remembered as what she was: a careful, precise, deeply loving woman who believed that preparation was the highest form of care. Ryan pulled me aside that afternoon. "Dad, we need to talk about the house." "Not today, Ryan. I know the timing is bad, but we need to start thinking practically. You're alone now. This house is a lot of work. Maybe we should talk about your options." "My options are to live in my house, the house your mother and I bought together." "Dad, I'm just saying, maybe it's time to think about downsizing. You could sell this place, get something smaller." "Ryan, your mother died 3 hours ago. I'm not discussing real estate." He backed off, but the seed was planted. Michelle was next. 2 weeks after the funeral, she called. "Dad, Craig and I have been talking. We're worried about you being alone in that big house. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency and no one's there?" "Kevin lives 10 minutes away. He checks on me." "Kevin can barely take care of himself, Dad. No offense, but he's not exactly reliable." "I'm 62 years old, Michelle. I don't need a retirement community." "You will eventually. Why not plan ahead?" "Because I'm not ready. Because this is my home. Because your mother is everywhere in this house, and I'm not leaving her." Because I'm not ready. Because this is my home. Because your mother is everywhere in this house, and I'm not leaving her. Michelle sighed. We're just trying to help, Dad. But it wasn't help. I recognized it even then, through the fog of grief. It was positioning. Ryan wanted the house. Michelle wanted the money. And they were starting the campaign less than a month after their mother's funeral. Kevin was different. Kevin came over 3 times a week. He'd sit with me on the porch and we'd talk about Margaret. He'd bring groceries. He'd mow the lawn. He never once mentioned selling the house or my finances or my options. He just showed up. One evening, about 6 weeks after Margaret died, Kevin said something that stopped me cold. Dad, Ryan called me yesterday. He asked me how much I thought the house was worth. What did you tell him? I told him it was your house, and it wasn't any of his business. He didn't like that. No, I imagine he didn't. Dad, I think Ryan and Michelle are planning something. They've been talking on the phone a lot. Michelle called me too. She wanted to know about Mom's life insurance, whether I knew who the beneficiary was. What did you tell her? I told her I didn't know. But Dad, I'm worried. They're not asking these questions because they care about you. They're asking because they want to know what they're going to get. Kevin looked at me with an expression that was part fear, part anger, part the desperate helplessness of the youngest child watching his older siblings circle their father. I know, I said. I've seen it. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But your mother left me something. She told me not to tell anyone about it. And I think she left it because she knew this was coming. Mom knew? Your mother knew everything, Kevin. She always did. 3 months after Margaret's funeral, Ryan and Michelle staged what I now call the intervention. They showed up together on a Sunday afternoon, unannounced, matching concerned expressions. They sat me down at the kitchen table, my kitchen table in my house, and presented what they called a plan for Dad's future. Ryan did most of the talking. He'd prepared a folder, printed documents, spreadsheets, research. He was thorough, I'll give him that. His finance background was showing. Dad, we've been doing some research. You're 62. You're alone. The house needs maintenance you can't keep up with. Your retirement savings are good, but they'll go further if you're not paying property taxes and utility bills on a 3-bedroom house.
I can manage my own finances, Ryan.
We know you can, but we think there's a smarter approach. We found a place, Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's really nice. Private rooms, medical staff, activities. They have a waiting list, but Michelle knows someone on the board. I don't need a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, Dad. It's assisted living. It's for people who are still independent, but want a community. I have a community. I have my house. I have Kevin. I have friends. Michelle jumped in. Dad, Kevin isn't going to be able to take care of you forever. He has his own life. And what happens when you can't drive anymore? When you can't cook? When you need help getting dressed? I'm 62, Michelle. I can dress myself. You can now. But what about 5 years from now? 10? We're trying to plan ahead. They tag-teamed me for an hour. Every argument I made, they had a counter. Every objection I raised, they had a statistic, a brochure, a testimonial from someone whose parent thrived at Meadowbrook. I held firm. I said no. I said I wasn't leaving my house. I said Margaret would never have wanted this. I said I was perfectly capable of living on my own. They left that afternoon looking frustrated but not defeated. And I realized, sitting alone at my kitchen table after they'd gone, that this was just round 1. Ryan and Michelle were patient. They had time. And they believed, with the certainty of people who think they're smarter than everyone around them, that eventually I'd give in. They were wrong.
But what happened next proved that they were willing to go much further than I'd imagined. Over the following months, Ryan and Michelle executed a campaign of erosion. They called me separately and together, always circling back to the same themes: my age, my health, my loneliness, the house being too much. They dropped statistics about elderly people living alone. They mentioned accidents, falls, heart attacks. They painted a picture of my future that was dark and frightening and designed to make me feel incapable. And they started planting doubts with other people. My neighbor Frank told me that Michelle had called him. She asked me if I'd noticed you acting confused. She said she was worried about your memory. My doctor's office called to confirm an appointment Ryan had made for me, a cognitive assessment I'd never agreed to. My bank contacted me about a power of attorney form that Ryan had submitted, a form I'd never signed.
That last one was the moment everything changed. Ryan had submitted a forged power of attorney to my bank. He was trying to gain access to my accounts without my knowledge. I called the bank immediately and canceled the form. Then I called my old friend George Hamlin, a retired police detective I'd known for 20 years. George listened to everything and said, "Robert, your children are trying to have you declared incompetent. That's the play. They convince the right people you can't take care of yourself. They get guardianship, and then they control everything. Your money, your house, your life. They can't do that. I'm not incompetent. Doesn't matter what you are. It matters what they can prove. And if they've already tried to forge a power of attorney, they're willing to fabricate evidence." George was right, and his warning came just in time. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from a law firm in Columbus, Ryan City. It was a petition for guardianship. Ryan was asking the court to declare me incapacitated and in need of supervised care. The petition cited concerns about my memory, my ability to manage finances, and my physical safety. It was signed by Ryan and Michelle. I stared at that letter for an hour. My own children, petitioning a court to take away my independence. My own children, trying to legally erase my ability to make decisions about my own life. I called Kevin. His reaction was immediate and explosive. "Dad, this is insane. You're not incapacitated. You're grieving. There's a difference." "I know that. But they're claiming I'm confused, that I can't manage my finances." "Dad, you were a regional supervisor at an insurance company. You managed a $12 million claims portfolio. You're not confused." "Kevin, I need a lawyer." "I know one. Patricia Dunn. She handled a case for a friend of mine. Same situation. Adult children trying to take guardianship from a parent who didn't need it. She won." Patricia Dunn was exactly what I needed. Mid-50s, former prosecutor, now in private practice specializing in elder rights. When I showed her Ryan's petition, she read it with the focused intensity of someone who'd seen this exact playbook before. "Mr. Calloway, this petition is aggressive but sloppy. Your son is relying on vague claims, concerns about memory, inability to manage finances, without any medical evidence to support them. He hasn't provided a cognitive assessment. He hasn't provided testimony from your physician. He's banking on the court taking his word for it." "Will the court take his word for it?" "Not if we fight back. And we're going to fight back hard." Patricia filed a response to the petition within a week. She included my medical records showing no cognitive decline. She included a letter from my doctor confirming I was in full mental and physical health. She included my bank records showing consistent, rational financial management. And she included evidence of Ryan's forged power of attorney, proof that his concern was actually a calculated attempt to seize control. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for July 2023. But before the hearing, Ryan and Michelle made their boldest move yet.
On a Monday morning in June, I woke up to find all three of my children at my front door: Ryan, Michelle, and Kevin. Kevin looked confused, uncomfortable, like he'd been told this was a family meeting, but hadn't been briefed on the agenda. Ryan was carrying a folder. Michelle had a brochure. The Meadowbrook brochure again, with a new photo on the front. "Dad," Ryan said, stepping inside uninvited. "We need to talk, all of us, as a family."
About what?
About your future. About what's best for everyone. They sat me down in my own living room. Ryan presented his case again, but this time it was different. This time he had a new argument. "Dad, the guardianship petition isn't meant to hurt you. It's meant to protect you. But we'd rather not go through the courts. We'd rather do this as a family." "Do what as a family?" Ryan looked at Michelle. She nodded. Then Ryan said, "We want you to voluntarily move to Meadowbrook. We'll handle the transition. We'll sell the house. The market's good right now. We'll manage your finances through a family trust that all three of us oversee. And we'll make sure you're comfortable. You want me to give up my house, my money, and my independence. Voluntarily. We want you to let us help you." "No." "Dad, I said no. I'm not leaving my house. I'm not giving you control of my money. And the guardianship petition is going to fail because there's nothing wrong with me." Ryan's face tightened. "Dad, we're trying to avoid a public fight. The hearing is going to be embarrassing for all of us." "I'm not the one who filed it, Ryan. You did. If it's embarrassing, that's your problem." Michelle leaned forward.
Dad, please. We're your children. We love you. We just want what's best.
"What's best for whom?" Silence. Kevin spoke for the first time. "Dad's right. This isn't about him. This is about the house and the money." Ryan turned on Kevin. "Stay out of this. You don't have the full picture." "I have enough of it. You forged a power of attorney. You filed a guardianship petition against our father 4 months after Mom died. You're not protecting him. You're stealing from him." The room went very quiet. Ryan and Kevin stared at each other across my living room, and I saw the family I'd raised fracture along lines that Margaret had seen years ago. The leader and the sensitive one. The strategist and the honest one. Michelle tried to mediate.
Kevin, that's not fair. We're all fair. Michelle, you and Craig are $180,000 in credit card debt. You need Dad's money to bail yourselves out. That's not family concern. That's desperation. Michelle's face went white. "How do you know about our debt?" "Mom told me, before she died. She knew everything." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Ryan and Michelle left that afternoon. Kevin stayed. We sat on the porch, and he told me what Margaret had shared with him in her final months. Things she'd discovered about Ryan's financial situation. 2 failed investments, significant losses he'd hidden. About Michelle and Craig's crushing debt. About the conversations she'd overheard and the patterns she'd documented. "Mom kept records of everything," Kevin said. "She told me she was making sure you'd be protected." "The safety deposit box," I said. Kevin looked at me. "What safety deposit box?" "Your mother told me about it before she died. Box 77 at First Federal. She said to go there when I needed it. She said not to tell anyone." "Have you opened it?" "Not yet. I was waiting. I think I was waiting for exactly this moment." The next morning, I drove to First Federal Bank on Washington Street. I found the key exactly where Margaret had said, taped to the bottom of the velvet liner in her jewelry box.
Box 77 was small. The kind of box that doesn't look like it could hold anything that matters. But when I opened it, I found 4 items that would change everything. 3 sealed envelopes, 1 labeled Ryan, 1 labeled Michelle, 1 labeled Kevin. And beneath them, a letter addressed to me. I opened my letter first. My dearest Robert,
If you're reading this, then our children have done what I feared they would. I'm sorry. I spent the last months of my life hoping I was wrong, hoping that the patterns I'd seen were just a mother's paranoia. But I know our children, Robert. I know them better than they know themselves. And I know that grief makes people do terrible things, especially people who were already capable of terrible things before the grief arrived. Let me tell you what I've done. For the last 8 months, I've been investigating our children's finances, not because I wanted to invade their privacy, but because I started noticing things that frightened me. Ryan's requests for money increased after his second investment failed, an investment he never told us about. Michelle's lifestyle became more extravagant even as Craig's income declined. And Kevin, our sweet Kevin, kept asking for small amounts because he genuinely needed them, while his siblings were quietly calculating how much our estate was worth. I hired an accountant, David Mercer, someone I trusted from the recorder's office. He investigated discreetly. What he found is in the envelopes. Ryan's envelope contains documentation of 2 failed investments totaling $120,000 in losses, 3 personal loans he's defaulted on, and email correspondence where he discusses accessing Dad's assets with a financial advisor. He's been planning to take control of your finances for over a year, Robert, since before I was diagnosed. Michelle's envelope contains documentation of $180,000 in credit card debt, Craig's suspension from his pharmaceutical company for falsifying sales reports, and text messages between Michelle and Ryan where they discuss having you declared incompetent so they can sell the house and split the proceeds. Those texts were sent while I was still alive, Robert, while I was in the next room, dying.
Kevin's envelope is different. It contains a letter from me telling Kevin that he was the only one who showed up without an agenda. It contains $50,000 in savings bonds I purchased in his name, money his siblings don't know about. And it contains my instructions for what to do next. Robert, I need you to take these envelopes to Patricia Dunn. Yes, I've already spoken to her. She's been waiting for your call. She knows everything. She has copies of all the financial evidence, the emails, the text messages. She's been building a case since October. I also need you to know that I updated my will. The house, the retirement savings, the life insurance. Everything goes into the Margaret Calloway Protection Trust. You are the sole trustee. The children are beneficiaries only under conditions I've specified. And those conditions require your explicit, notarized, in-person consent for any distribution. Ryan cannot touch it. Michelle cannot touch it. No guardianship petition, no power of attorney, no court order can override the trust without your personal authorization. I built this wall around you, Robert. I built it because I love you, and because I know what our children are capable of. And because the only thing I could do from a body that was failing me was make sure that the man I love would be safe when I was gone. One more thing. If they've put you in a nursing home, and I believe they will try, the trust gives Patricia the authority to act on your behalf. She can file for your release. She can challenge any guardianship order. She can do everything I would have done if I'd been there. I'm sorry I can't be there, Robert. I'm sorry I have to fight for you from beyond a grave. But I've spent 32 years loving you,
and I'm not going to stop just because I'm dead. Open the envelopes when Patricia tells you to, not before. The timing matters.
I love you. I love our children, even the ones who are breaking my heart. But love doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Love means protecting you, even from them. Forever, Margaret. P.S. The tomatoes in the backyard need watering. I know you'll forget. You always forget. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and read that letter 4 times. I laughed at the last line. I cried at every other line. Margaret. My Margaret. Dying of ALS, losing control of her body one muscle at a time, and she was building a legal fortress around me with the same precision she'd used to organize our filing cabinet. She'd known. She'd known about Ryan's failed investments. She'd known about Michelle's debt. She'd known about the texts between them discussing how to take control of my assets. She'd known that they would come for me after she was gone. And she'd spent her final months making sure they would fail. I drove directly to Patricia Dunn's office. When I walked in with the envelopes, Patricia didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. "Margaret told me you'd come," Patricia said. "She said it would take about 4 to 6 months after her death." It's been 4 months. She was accurate about most things. I handed Patricia the envelopes. She opened Ryan's first. Inside was everything Margaret had described: financial records, defaulted loans, email correspondence. Patricia read through it methodically, nodding. "This changes everything," she said. "The guardianship petition was filed by someone who's $120,000 in debt and has been planning to access your assets for over a year. That's not protective concern. That's predatory behavior." She opened Michelle's envelope next. The credit card statements, Craig's suspension, and the text messages, screenshots Margaret had somehow obtained, showing conversations between Ryan and Michelle that made my stomach turn. If we can get Dad declared incompetent, we sell the house, split the retirement fund, and use the insurance money to cover our debts. Kevin gets nothing. He doesn't need to know. How fast can we move? I've got creditors calling every day. Dad's stubborn, but once Mom's gone, he'll fall apart. Give it a few months. He'll agree to Meadowbrook, and once he's there, we petition for guardianship. Done. They'd planned it, while Margaret was alive. While she was lying in the next room, fighting ALS with everything she had, her 2 oldest children were in the kitchen texting each other about how to take everything she and I had built. Patricia set down the screenshots. "Robert, these messages are devastating. Combined with the forged power of attorney, the guardianship petition, and the financial evidence, your children have built a case against themselves." What do? We go to the guardianship hearing. We present all of this. We don't just defeat the petition, we destroy it. And then we refer the criminal evidence to the prosecutor. Forgery, fraud, attempted theft by deception, elder abuse. "They're my children." Patricia looked at me. "I know, and I'm sorry. But Margaret wanted you protected. She spent the last months of her life making sure you would be. Are you going to honor that?" I thought about Margaret, about her filing cabinet, about her ledgers, about her obsession with documentation and paper trails and putting things in writing, about her last words to me. "Box 77, Robert, when you need it." "Yes," I said. "We honor it." The guardianship hearing happened in July 2023. It was supposed to be Ryan's moment of triumph, the hearing where a judge would declare his father incompetent and hand control of an $870,000 estate to his children. Instead, it became the worst day of Ryan Calloway's life. Patricia presented the evidence methodically. First, my medical records. Clean cognitive assessments, no signs of decline, full physical and mental health confirmed by 2 independent physicians. Then, the forged power of attorney, with a handwriting expert's testimony confirming it was Ryan's writing, not mine. Then she opened the envelopes. Ryan's financial records were projected on a screen in the courtroom. $120,000 in failed investments, 3 defaulted loans, email correspondence discussing accessing Dad's assets. The judge watched Ryan's face as each document appeared. Ryan's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the judge overruled every time. Then came Michelle's envelope, the credit card debt, Craig's suspension, and the text messages. Patricia read them aloud. If we can get Dad declared incompetent, we sell the house, split the retirement fund, and use the insurance money to cover our debts. Kevin gets nothing. The courtroom was silent. Michelle was crying. Ryan was staring at the table in front of him, his face drained of color. Craig had left the courtroom entirely. Kevin was sitting behind me. I could feel his presence. Steady, solid. The one child who'd shown up without an agenda. The judge, Judge Helen Markham, a woman in her late 60s who'd clearly seen every kind of family destruction, spoke directly to Ryan and Michelle. I've reviewed the petition, the evidence, and the testimony. Let me be clear about what I see. I see 2 adult children who filed a guardianship petition not out of genuine concern for their father's well-being, but as a mechanism to seize control of his estate. I see forged documents. I see financial desperation masquerading as family love. And I see text messages that reveal the true motivation behind this petition. Greed.
She turned to me. Mr. Calloway, the petition for guardianship is denied. You are, by all medical and legal standards, a competent adult, fully capable of managing your own affairs. Then she turned back to Ryan and Michelle. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office. The forged power of attorney alone constitutes a criminal offense. Combined with the evidence of coordinated financial exploitation, I expect the DA will take this very seriously. Ryan stood up. Your Honor, this is a family matter. We were trying to help. Sit down, Mr. Calloway, Judge Markham said. You weren't trying to help. You were trying to steal. And you got caught because your mother was smarter than both of you combined. That line, your mother was smarter than both of you combined, stayed with me. Because it was true. Margaret had seen it all. She'd documented it all. She'd prepared for it all. And she'd done it while dying. The criminal case moved quickly after the hearing. The DA charged Ryan with forgery, fraud, and attempted elder abuse. Michelle was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Craig was charged as an accessory. The trial lasted 5 days. Patricia's evidence, Margaret's evidence, was airtight. The financial records, the emails, the text messages, the forged power of attorney, the guardianship petition filed under false pretenses. Margaret had built a case so complete that the defense attorneys barely mounted a challenge. Ryan was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Michelle received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and court-ordered financial counseling. Craig received 6 months in county jail for his role in the scheme. Kevin's envelope was opened last. I gave it to him myself after the trial, sitting on the porch of the house on Chestnut Lane. Kevin read Margaret's letter silently. Tears streamed down his face. My dearest Kevin, the letter read. You were always the one who showed up. Not for the money, not for the house. For your father. For the pot roast. For the porch and the conversation and the simple act of being present. I see you, Kevin. I've always seen you. and I'm so proud of you. I've left you $50,000 in savings bonds because I wanted to give you something your siblings can never take. Not because you needed it more, but because you deserved to know that your mother noticed, that she valued your heart more than your brother's strategy or your sister's ambition. Take care of your father. He's going to need you. Not because he's weak, but because grief makes everyone fragile, and the strongest thing a son can do is show up when his father doesn't ask him to. I love you. I love all three of my children. But you, Kevin, are the one who makes me believe that we did something right. Mum.
Kevin folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "She always called me when I was having a bad day. I never knew how she knew. She just knew." "That was your mother," I said. "She always knew." Today, it's been 10 months since the trial. I'm still in the house on Chestnut Lane. Margaret's house. Our house. The tomatoes in the backyard are growing. I remembered to water them this time. Margaret would be proud. Kevin moved into the spare bedroom. He said it was to help me, but I think it's because he needed a home as much as I needed company. We have dinner together every night. I make pot roast on Sundays. He does the dishes. We sit on the porch and talk about Margaret, and watch the evenings settle over Dayton like a blanket. Ryan is in prison. He writes me letters sometimes. They're short, careful. The letters of a man who's beginning to understand what he lost. I read them. I don't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday. Michelle completed her community service. She and Craig are in counseling. She called me once, 3 months after the trial. She cried. She said she was sorry. I told her I heard her, but that sorry was a word, and I needed to see actions before I could believe it. She said she understood. I've started volunteering at the senior center, helping other people with estate planning, with understanding their rights, with building the kind of protections Margaret built for me. I'm not a lawyer or a financial advisor. I'm just a man who learned the hard way that family love and family loyalty are not the same thing. Margaret's filing cabinet is still in the spare bedroom. Kevin reorganized it, added new folders, updated the insurance policies, made sure everything was current. He does it with the same precision Margaret used, and sometimes when I see him at that cabinet, sorting papers with careful hands, I see her. I see her in him.
The safety deposit box at First Federal is empty now. The envelopes served their purpose, but I've kept the box. I pay the annual fee, and inside it, I've placed one item. A photograph of Margaret and me from our wedding day. The one where she's looking at the camera with those brown eyes and that expression that says, "I've got this handled." She did. She handled everything. From beyond the grave, with 3 envelopes and a letter that smelled faintly of the lavender lotion she used on her hands, Margaret Ann Calloway protected her husband from his own children. And to you, listening, I want to say this. Margaret's story isn't just about protecting money or property. It's about the terrifying reality that the people closest to you, your own blood, can become the people most willing to take advantage of you. Not because they're evil, because they're desperate. Because debt and failure and shame can turn love into something transactional. If you're aging, if you're alone, if you're vulnerable in any way, please hear me. Protect yourself. Create a trust. Update your will. Talk to a lawyer. Document everything. Don't assume that love is enough. Love is essential, but paper is power. Margaret taught me that. She spent 32 years teaching me that, and I didn't fully understand until she saved my life with 3 envelopes and a key to Box 77. I'm Robert Calloway. I'm 63 years old. I live in a house on Chestnut Lane with my son Kevin and the ghost of a woman who loved me enough to fight for me even after she was gone. If this story touched you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think Margaret would say if she could see us now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe if you want more stories about family, truth, and the kind of love that doesn't stop at death. And one last reminder before we go.
This story, like all stories on this channel, contains fictional elements created for entertainment and educational purposes. If this type of content isn't for you, that's completely okay. Take care of yourselves. But if you stayed until the end, thank you. Margaret would have liked that. She always appreciated people who finished what they started. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go water the tomatoes. I promised her I wouldn't forget.